Hello, I have a little activity that I wanted to share with you as part of my healing today, part of my brain trauma activities. I suffered a serious car accident about 13 weeks ago, and part of my healing as an artist has been very much art therapy. My therapist and I have worked out what I can and can't do, and for me, predominantly, my art is anything that is meditative for me, anything that puts me in a calm, zen space is perfectly fine for me to do. I decided to teach myself how to crochet just before the accident, as we went into one of our biggest lockdowns for about 6 months or so. Due to the pandemic, and my grandmother is Russian and she was a crocheter, and I wanted to carry some of that on. So I've been teaching myself with YouTube the basics of how to crochet and so on, but one of my girlfriends was originally one of my spiritual development students. You may or may not know that I've worked professionally as a clairvoyant for decades, and I ran colleges of natural therapies and spiritual development classes, and so a lot of my students have stayed in touch with me over the years, and one in particular is a very, very good friend of mine now, and was the first one there when I went through a marriage separation and not having the kids around me, and checked in to see if I was okay. And then, of course, with the car accident, send me messages here and there just to make sure I'm okay. Anyways, her favourite colours are turquoise and violet, so I decided to make a crocheted blanket for her. But I wanted to share a bit of a spiritual journey with you about this blanket and how it became really, really interesting. So she's a really, not in age, but her style is very old-fashioned, very Federation or heirloom, I guess, really delicate and really quite soft, and old-fashioned teacups and things like that. So I had to find a pattern that fitted that sort of heirloom brief, and so this is the colour and the pattern of what I chose to make her. And of course I wanted to finish it all off with a little pretty floral edges on it. Originally I had thought to put a butterfly on it or something like that. So this is her beautiful blanket, and something interesting happened as I was crocheting it. I decided to finish each of these, they're called a willow pattern, each of this pattern one by one, rather than do all the white then all the purple or violet. I wanted to do one section, and as I was making the first section, I started thinking about her quite a lot, actually. Put her next to my son's cat. I hope she's not allergic to cats. It's next to it. But as I started to make it, the first square, I started to think about her a lot. And so, there we go, put it that way, it looks a bit prettier. And I thought, well, that makes sense because she is who I'm making it for, and that is who I would be thinking about. But it was interesting because what I was thinking about was kind of things that would be healing for her. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I might share that with her when it's finished. And then I went on to the second square, and a different type of healing energy came about for her. And I thought, that's interesting. I wonder if this is some sort of message that I'm receiving for her. So I went on to the third square, and again, a different spiritual message came, but it was kind of more like a healing, as in this particular energy of healing is this. So I thought, I wonder if this is going to continue, whether I should write it down. So I've got a little speech to text thing in my phone. So I started speaking in the energies that I was feeling as I worked with every individual square. I ended up with 40 squares, and it didn't stop. It went through the entire blanket with a different healing energy square. Now, I'm doing a lot of NLP work at the moment to help with my recovery, and I'm doing psychology and neurosurgery appointments and all sorts of things. I have memory problems. This is something I love, so it doesn't present any stress to me whatsoever. So I'm able to talk without stuttering, which has been a bit of a problem for me, and memory flow has been a little bit of a problem as well. But I wrote each one down as I went by speaking it into a little program in my phone. And when I got to the end of it, there was these 40 messages. But part of the work with my, excuse me if I'm darting a little bit, my brain does that at the moment sometimes. Part of my NLP work is that we often talk about our inner child or our future self, and we visualize a blanket around that person as part of the visualization, and the blanket has a feel, a texture, a color, and we're asked in the visualization, how does that make your younger self feel? What are the words you want to give? And so essentially there's a whole process in NLP or neuro-linguistic programming about this blanket of love. It's called a blanket of love, and it's a healing blanket of love. So as I was making this, I recognized that maybe it's all in my mind, maybe it's incredible spiritual wisdom, but maybe this is an actual physical manifestation of a healing blanket. I'm wondering, when she uses it, whether those healing energies exist within the blanket itself, whether they come out, whether they help her. She has some hospital visits coming up, and I wanted to make something she could perhaps pop over her knees. So on one hand, it's going to keep her warm, but on another hand, I wonder if spiritually it's going to produce healing energies for her while she's going through that process. Worst case scenario, it will keep her warm, and it's very pretty. Well, I think it's pretty, and I'm a little proud that I was able to achieve that with brain trauma at the moment. And the best case scenario is it's warm, it's pretty, and it brings about beautiful healing energies. I've never heard of blankets being created for their healing properties. I'd never heard, that doesn't mean they don't exist, I just hadn't heard of it. I'd never heard of spiritual healing energies being imbued into the fabric while a blanket was being made, but I have spent a lot of my life making documentaries on unsolved mysteries around the world. I've spent a lot of my life living with Bobohisan, the high priestesses, the shamans, the witch doctors, the Wukan and Dukan in Bali, the Qigong masters in China. I've travelled the world in search of the unknown and the mysteries of the world, and I have a lot of stories that maybe one day I could share with you about some of those experiences, including the documentaries I've been involved with making. But for now, I have this really interesting little healing blanket that I'm quite excited to get to her, and I know she'll love it, but I'm really interested to hear if she has any experiences from that. And I just thought it would be a beautiful thing to share with you to document this journey. I won't be selling these. Usually when I do something like this, people say, can I buy one? No, my healing journey, my therapists have said if I'm making something for art's sake, that's perfectly fine because it's meditative. But if I get an order for them, that becomes work and it moves it into a red light activity for me. So I can't. I also think there's something incredibly special about heartfelt gifts or spiritual gifts or healing gifts that can't be bought. They are only given with complete love and no cost to the recipient. So I hope you enjoyed this little story, and thank you for sharing with me. And Sue, this one goes out to you.